Pokrovsk, the city where composer Nikolai Leontovich wrote Shtedrik, later known as the Christmas song, is now associated not with music, but with death and destruction. At the same time, the city continues to stand, and this in itself is a great victory, Forbes reports. The Kremlin believes that if Pokrovsk falls, then other cities in Donbass, which are currently under the protection of the Ukrainian armed forces, will also fall. In mid-August, Russian troops penetrated Ukrainian defenses to the east and northeast of Dobropilya in small sabotage groups advancing approximately 10 kilometers in depth, but they were unable to consolidate their gains. The Ukrainian 1st Azov Corps was sent to reinforce the area, and Ukrainian counterattacks in recent weeks have steadily eroded these footholds. Over the course of several days, the 93rd Kholodny Yar Brigade, supported by reconnaissance, artillery, and drones, recaptured the villages of Grusko and Veleso in the Dobropilya region. They also used unmanned ground vehicles equipped with machine guns to fire direct fire at Russian positions, facilitating the offensive. Dmitry Zluktenko, a Ukrainian armed forces fighter, said his team is focused on striking infantry groups and equipment at a distance of up to 20 kilometers from the front, disrupting the offensive before it even begins. However, the supply shortage is putting a strain on Ukrainian units. The elite Rubicon drone unit is attacking logistic centers on the Pokrovsk-Konstantinovka front, cutting off supplies to drone crews on the front lines. Some units on the Donetsk front suffer from a shortage of drones. Yuri Dimkovich, a drone pilot from the 23rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, said, "We are holding the line, but we have far fewer infantry and too few drones. The warehouse is almost out of drones, so they are being issued on a ration basis. Each crew is limited to a maximum of 25 drones per day." Pokrovsk continues to be under daily pressure, but Ukraine's effective use of unmanned aerial systems has limited Russia's offensive capabilities. Taking a city like Pokrovsk is not just a matter of advancing troops. Urban warfare is brutal and costly. It requires manpower, equipment, and a willingness to take huge casualties, Pinner said. He added that it would be difficult for Russia to continue such a campaign without suffering huge losses. That is why I do not believe that Pokrovsk will fall this year. If it does, it will not be fast, and there will be practically nothing left of the city. For now, the fortress at Pokrovsk holds. But Europe must understand that without more powerful support, such battles will tilt in favor of Moscow, where human lives are worthless and expendable.
The regional prosecutor's office in Kharkiv, Ukraine released a video showing the moment a Shahid drone struck an administrative building in the city center on Tuesday. According to Associated Press, debris could be seen flying into the air after the impact. According to officials, 4 people were injured in the strike. Regional Governor Ola Syniehubov said the drone targeted a busy central street. Obviously, the goal was to hit the maximum number of civilians, Syniehubov said. The attack damaged the roof and one of the floors of a 2-story administrative building. With the war grinding on since Russia's full-scale invasion of its neighbor more than 3.5 years ago, there has been no let-up in Russian strikes on civilian areas of Ukraine and its army's push on the roughly 1,000-kilometer front line. A peace settlement appears to be no closer despite months of U.S.-led peace efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump's ultimatums and deadlines for Putin to engage with proposals to stop the fighting have passed without obvious consequences.
Атака була в день, тобто атака була спрямована на те, щоб, напевно, уразити велику кількість цивільного населення, тому що це центральна частина міста, де перебуває велика кількість людей, перебуває через дорогу, фактично це ринок, він працює. На вулицях знаходилась велика кількість людей так само, ну, я скажу так, то просто дивом ніхто не постраждав.
One person was killed and 13 others, including children, were injured in a Russian strike on Zaporizhia on Tuesday. According to Associated Press, Regional Governor Ivan Fedorov reported that at least 10 strikes were launched on the city overnight, targeting civilian infrastructure. According to the State Emergency Service, a large-scale fire broke out at residential buildings. 78 rescuers and 17 pieces of equipment were deployed in the aftermath, Emergency Service reported.
Немає ніяких ознак.
ZWAR correspondents urge not to trust the Kremlin media, which initially provide deliberately false information about the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. Thus, in the Pokrovsk area, there is no encirclement of the Ukrainian armed forces, just as there is no forward movement on the part of Putin's army. At the same time, in some sections of the front in the Pokrovsk area, the enemy is abandoning its positions under the attacks of the Ukrainian armed forces. Russian war correspondents write that the Ukrainian armed forces are doing well with their reserves. The enemy has suffered heavy losses in the area of Volchansk and Kupiansk. The Ukrainian armed forces are striking Putin's army with both artillery and drones. On average, the enemy advances 80 meters per week, but then retreats just as quickly. Operation Kupiansk Pipe has failed miserably. Ukrainian artillery has covered everyone who was in it or near it. The enemy also has heavy losses in the Sumy region. In the Yunakovka area, Putin's army is sitting in deep defense, and the daily losses of the Russian armed forces are up to 35 soldiers and officers. Information from propaganda media about the mass surrender of Ukrainian servicemen does not correspond to reality. Z channels also complained about China, which refused to allocate funding to Russia for the construction of a new gas pipeline. Let us recall that in the area of Kupiansk and Volchansk, the artillery of the Ukrainian armed forces does not allow the enemy to penetrate into the cities with large forces. A Russian military blogger claimed that Putin's army has advanced to the northeastern outskirts of Kupiansk, as well as to the western and central parts of the city itself. Russian troops attacked in the area of Kupiansk itself, in the area of Mirovoy and Kondratovka, in the area of Figurovka, and in the direction of Petro-Ivanovka, in the area of Petropavlovka and Kondratovka, and in the area of Stepova Novoselovka. On September the 14th, the 10th Army Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that Ukrainian troops were continuing counter-sabotage operations in the Kupiansk and its environs following recent attempts by the Russian armed forces to penetrate Kupiansk through an underground pipeline. The 10th Army Corps of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that Ukrainian forces are conducting fire control over the exit of the pipeline that Russian troops used to advance, and 3 of the 4 pipelines in the Kupiansk area are damaged or flooded. This suggests that Russian forces will only be able to use one pipeline for such operations. On September the 12th, Ukrainian sources reported that Russian forces had attempted to advance behind Ukrainian positions in Kupiansk using a pipeline with an entrance near Liman Pervy and an exit near Radkivka, and that Ukrainian drone strikes had since made the pipeline impassable. Z Publics also admit that the Russian armed forces are currently advancing only in the Donetsk and Zaporizhia directions. In the area of Vovchansk and Kupiansk, Putin's army has suffered very heavy losses due to artillery and drones of the Ukrainian armed forces. In these areas, the enemy advances up to 80 meters per week, but then often retreats under the blows of the Ukrainian armed forces.